Indiana! Welcome to this special presentation from the Progressive Indiana Network. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm the editor-in-chief over here at PIN, as well as the host of the Who's Left podcast. I am here tonight with Clif Marsiglio, candidate for Indiana State Senate District 46. We are here to take your questions. We want to hear from the people of Indianapolis and frankly, the rest of the state, because the state Senate, makes decisions that affect all Hoosiers. So, priorities certainly to the folks in the Circle City. But we would like to hear your questions. Put them right there in the chat on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and at progressiveindiana.net. There's still a web form floating around there too. If you got the QR code, you can still submit things that way. I've got windows all over my screen. I am your conduit. I am only here to relay your questions to Clif. So please put those questions in the chat. Clif would love to hear from you. But first, let's hear a brief introduction from Clif. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good evening. I was about to say good morning. I apologize to everybody. I am getting over allergies. I sound stuffy, and not stuffy my voice sounds husky in a good way. Stuffy. I am just dying from these allergies because this is what we get in Indiana every April. So I apologize if I'm not as high energy as I usually am. With that, I'm going to take a little sip of tea.
Absolutely, sir. So, as we're waiting for folks to sort of start queuing up their questions in the chat, and again, we welcome your input. We welcome your questions. That is what we're here for on YouTube, on Facebook Live, at progressiveindiana.net. Right there in the chat. I can bring them up on screen. But while we're waiting on that, Clif, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, my name is Clif Marsiglio. I've lived here in Indianapolis for actually 35 years, moved here for college and never left. In fact, never left the university. I thought I was going to be here in Indianapolis for just a few years, had a professor that I really wanted to work with, and I never left Indianapolis, never left the university. Just enjoyed every last moment of what it is here in the capital city. I'm an avid cyclist. There's no better way to get around our capital city without just being able to talk to people randomly. I think I counted yesterday 17 people on the way to work. Just, hey, how are you doing? So other than that, I'm obviously, I'm running for Senate District 46. It is the only Senate district in Indiana that is fully within the bounds of Indianapolis. It is the Senate district where the Capitol is. It is all of downtown, and I am looking forward to representing everyone.
So, listen, Clif, I guess I want to start there because the current senator in this district is Andrea Hunley, and she's vacating this seat to run for mayor of the city in 2027. And we're looking forward to covering that race. But hey, we got big elections this year that we got to talk about here first. And so, I want to ask, Andrea Hunley, I think, is very, very highly regarded in Indianapolis. She's a former IPS principal, a Black woman. This is a diverse district. Why replace her with a 54-year-old white guy?
I've known Andrea for probably a decade almost. I actually got to know her as I would bike into the office. I ran into her multiple times. My first introduction to her was, who is this fashionably dressed young lady on her bike with an amazing helmet? And I said hey to her. I said hey, and found out she's the principal of a school that's on my way to my office. And she is well beloved by both her former students as well as anybody in the district. There is no way in hell that I'm actually going to be replacing her in any way. There is nobody that could replace her. But taking a role into her seat, I can tell you one of her big things is education. You could ask no one better about education than her. However, my day job is an accreditation, program review, all the nerdy stuff that comes to running a university, a public university. Accreditation is that sector of education where you are looking to remediate failures, celebrate successes, help help replicate that throughout the different parts of the educational system. I used to do consulting with the commissioner for higher ed, which is a misnomer because it's actually K-12 and it's the how do we get kids in K-12 to bridge the gap to go on to their next step, be it trade school, be it military, be it higher ed. Granted, I was focusing on what it was taking to get them to higher ed. So I have the wherewithal to fill in the gaps what Andrea did with higher ed or with education in general. Most people do not have this background. I believe that I'm one of the few in Indiana that have this background at all. And given the fact that half of our income taxes goes to public education, I'm going to be trying to use my background to support fully funded public education.
So I guess let's start there. Let's talk about that. One of your opponents in this primary race is a IPS board member, and would
Correct.
perhaps fill that public education role with her knowledge in that area, taking that to the state house. Why? Where do the two of you differ, and why are you the education candidate here in this race?
So I have two kids in school, one elementary, one middle school, and I have seen what has been happening to IPS, Indianapolis Public Schools, for anybody who's not in Indianapolis. IPS has been legislated to the point where we are killing it. And I'm trying to figure out how to say this and still be polite because I love my opponents. How do I say this? As an educator, it comes down to you have to fully back education. You can't slow walk charter schools. You can't both sides charter schools. You can't simply say, well, both sides have a good point. And we saw that. We saw lackluster support for public schools. I am never going to do anything other than fully support public schools.
Okay, very good. So I guess I want a clarification here. Daniel on
Hey, Daniel.
Substack Live there over at Progressive Indiana Network asks, or says rather, that Daniel also works for IU as a staff member and would not say that he is an educator. Says your understanding is that you claim to be an educator but are simply a fellow staffer at IU. Where does the educator claim come from?
Educator. Well, when you're working in accreditation, your idea is, how do I fix education? Again, my background comes from working in accreditation. I have taught classes. I've taught group dynamics. I've taught statistics. I've taught humanistic psychology. I've taught a few other classes, and I've taught around in more than just IU. One of the places that I've taught was Martin University, which just got closed down because of funding issues. And I enjoyed my time at Martin University. Martin University is one of those other places that I tried to help out with accreditation. Anybody who knows what accreditation is knows that it's the administration. You wouldn't look at a principal and say, "Hey, you're not a educator. You're just a principal." So I'm not sure where that question's coming from.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I want to stay on education and come back to the charter school issue. And it says you fully support public schools, right?
Correct.
Over charters. The state should be focusing their money on our public education system. But charter schools are, they're in the buildings, they're in the budget. At least for now, they're not going anywhere. So what kind of accountability framework can you put in place from the State House? And, how do you get there where, likely you're in a situation with a Republican majority still, unless things get crazy this fall, could happen.
Could happen.
And they go to bat for school privatization. So how to, thread that needle.
So charter schools, one of the things I used to do is I used to do a lot of work with Commissioner for Higher Ed. And that was looking at what are the statistics that K-12 has? What is their admission standards? What are their council out status? How many students are failing? How many are succeeding? How many are going to higher ed? How many are finding employment outside of high school? We have dozens and dozens of stats that high schools have, that public schools have, that charter schools are free to hide as much as they want. And that's the biggest problem. We don't know how many students are being counseled out. Counseled out means they've had enough disciplinary problems that somewhere along the line, these charter schools say, hey, we've already got we've got every last cent that we're going to get from the student. We're going to send them back to public schools, where the public school now gets no money for the student. However, it's now their responsibility. It never goes the other way. You never see a public school say, oh, we've got disciplinary problems, let's send this student over to something in the mine trust.
Yes. So I guess I want to move up to higher education, because that's sort of where your expertise is. And as we've seen at IU over the last couple of years, at Purdue before that, really the state legislature, the governor have really put their fingerprints on our state's higher education system. Mike Braun took over the board of trustees at IU completely, eliminated any alumni input or faculty input, really. They eliminated a bunch of degree programs this year. How will you address that and maybe work on getting some independence back to our institutions of higher learning?
So I believe right now we have something like 180 programs at IU, and we're cutting programs. Generally, I would not be talking about my work at IU. I try to keep that off the radar. However, this is very relevant. I see programs that are very, how do I put this? We're cutting programs where people are not getting high-paying jobs, where they say, if you're not making more than the median wage, we're just going to cut this. Or we're going to cut this if only X amount of students finish up a program within a certain amount of time. We find a lot of these programs become preparatory programs that get somebody to a higher program. Or, for instance, we see a lot of programs that are being cut that are actually gateways to things like law school or medical ethics or medicine in general, that you would never know unless, of course, you were studying it from a much higher level. I don't think the governor has these stats. I don't think the governor cares about these stats. I think he's looking at one number and that's it. And this is what I want to bring to the table, is my expertise.
So I guess let's move to our web form there. We've had some folks submit questions online, and I want to go to Jackson in Irvington, who asks about housing affordability. And it's a pretty thoughtful question, more than I can fit on the banner. So I'm going to read the whole thing and then put a shortened version up on screen. So Jackson in Irvington says housing costs in Marion County have risen over 90% in the past decade, and many residents feel increasingly priced out. As private equity firms continue buying up single-family homes, what actions would you take to slow price growth? And do you support restricting or regulating these firms? How would you implement that at the local level to ensure local buyers aren't being outbid?
One of the problems we have is here in Indiana, we have more we have more corporate out of state. This is where I'm having a little bit of difficulty thinking right now. We have more out of state corporations who own single family houses than any other state in the nation. We have places like BlackRock that are trying to come in. BlackRock owns the majority of the corporate owned single family housing in America. They want to own more than just our utilities. They want to own our data centers and our homes where we live. They want to put us out of work. They want to own our houses and then charge us just to stay warm. Some of the things we really need to do is thinking about how do we tax out of state corporations who are buying homes. Honestly, I say tax the hell out of them. If they're not here in Indiana, if they're not contributing to the well-being of Indiana, let's just tax the hell out of them until they realize this is not a profit center that they want to be in.
So what I'm hearing is that we should raise taxes on these institutional investors that when they purchase homes such to the point where it is not profitable for them to continue to do so.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned BlackRock, and that is interesting because it's not just single-family homes they're scooping up. They are also buying up the public utilities in the state. And they announced just within the past few months that they intend to acquire AES. AES is the parent company of the utility there in Indianapolis where you get your electricity. And this deal is supposed to close late this year, maybe early 2027. So the legislature might have one more shot still potentially to scuttle that deal. What are you going to do about it?
Unfortunately, I think the legislators are going to do that before I get into power. However, I would filibuster. I would do everything that I can to make certain that it doesn't happen. So in the state Senate, we only have 10 Democrats on the state Senate. However, that also means that I only have to convince 16 Republicans to go my way. Most Republicans don't like these sorts of deals either. They're not getting their wallets filled with these. And they know that it's going to only be a matter of time before their constituents go the same way. Most Republicans that I talk to really don't like these deals.
So, but do you think they would actually? This was up, but there was a chance to scuttle these sort of deals in this previous legislative session. I want to say Democrats offered an amendment to House Bill 1002. That was the big utility bill that would have banned private equity firms from buying public utilities. They didn't want to do anything about it then. What makes you think they'll change their mind now?
I think they're seeing the writing on the wall. I think they're seeing the writing that this is going to affect their communities, and they know that it's a matter of time. It's time to talk to these people as if they're humans and have them talk to us as if we're humans as well.
So certainly having our utilities publicly traded or, even worse, privately held, like, AE or like BlackRock intends to, is driving up our utility bills. Maybe these things should belong to the public themselves. But I want to say another thing driving our high utility bills is these data centers. And I know
Correct.
you have been part of the group that has organized against this proposed Metroblocks data center in Martindale Brightwood area. It's still, the mayor supports it. So some of the city councilors support it. Neighbors don't seem to want the thing.
No.
Now, it still looks like it's going to go through. There may be the potential. It's not final, right? There's still the hurdles for this thing to clear.
We still have one more city council to go through before this goes through.
So, I guess in Maine, and this is one of our anonymous question submitters there who used our web forum, asked, Maine apparently just passed the first moratorium on data centers in the nation. If elected, do you promise to introduce anti-data center legislation?
Absolutely. We've looked at what it costs to have a data center. In most states that actually have them, when you actually do the environmental risk assessment, when you look at what we're putting into the waters and what we're taking out, if you're actually doing the work, if you're not having sub-rate electricity, if you're not asking if you're not asking homeowners around their residents to pay for the upgrades to the utilities, it is not cost effective for these companies at all. The only reason they're coming here is because we're giving them sweetheart deals, all the while that none of us are getting the same sweetheart deals. If a $1 trillion company can get a 30-year tax moratorium, you and I should be getting the same. I think there is a lot of people who should be getting tax moratoriums before Google or Amazon, or I'm trying to figure out which service we're on so we don't get cut off. But yeah, we need, everyday citizens need to have some moratoriums on taxes. I mean, even when we do tax moratorium, I mean, looking at the gas tax, we cut the gas tax this week, or was it last week that we cut it?
It was. I want to say it was last week. We maybe mentioned this on the past episode of our Sunday morning show, but yeah.
Well, prices went right back to where they were within a day, because we found a way to say, hey, even though our taxes were cut, we're still going to try to squeeze everybody because we already figured out people were willing to pay for what it was. I want to see tax breaks given to the general public. I want to see legislation going in place where companies cannot come after us and profiteer off of us. And that goes for gas for your cars. It goes for home ownership. You should not be able to raise rent 50% in 1 year. Things like that.
I guess I want to follow up on the data center question. You said you are a strong supporter of organized labor. Now,
correct.
Unions, the building trades particularly, they love these data centers. They think they're a great idea. These are big jobs. With a lot of complicated parts. Labor really wants to build these things. How do you thread that needle?
So we're going to be bringing in something like 450 jobs to build one of these data centers. That was the data center that we were looking at. The last data center I was looking at, they said 450 jobs. When I talked with the Carpenters Union, they were probably going to get 40 of those positions. Most of the jobs that we're going to be hired from out west. These are people who are migratory. These are people who go from data center to data center. Building. Organized labor should be at the forefront of any building. I don't know why they've taken it on with data centers, other than union presidents like to fill their pockets like anyone else. Um, However, there are hundreds of projects that could be built around Indiana. Low cost housing. Why are we not requiring every house that's built to be built through through organized labor? There are things like that.
So,
I mean,
what
there
I'm
shouldn't
hearing is that if maybe Indiana has a more labor-friendly legislature, then we could be building other things with organized labor instead of like these data centers are like all that's getting built right now, basically.
anything that's built by the state should be 90% organized labor. And a statement. If we are contributing a single cent to any project, it should be mandated at least 90% organized labor. We will find the ranks of the people who want to work in that. And to do that, we probably also need to get rid of the right to work statutes.
That's certainly a big one. Now, you mentioned certain things getting state support that for being built. These data centers are one of them. If you look at the LEAP district, for example, out in Lebanon, that's the IEDC, public-private partnerships. Governor Mike Braun just this week announced another public-private partnership. This time with Israeli like security firms, something they're calling Iron Nation Indiana, and one of our, if I can find my hey, there it is. This is Hans in Indy asks about this. How do you feel about the Braun initiative of sending millions of taxpayer dollars to Israel and his proposed Israeli-Indiana business partnerships?
We should absolutely not be doing any work with any foreign nation. We have enough jobs to go around in Indiana. We have enough jobs to go around the US. If we want to find public-private partnerships, let's stick with our country. If we're going to be, I mean, this is just a standard statement. I mean, I know a lot of my friends are like, "Oh, it's Israel, they're evil." I'm looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint. I don't want to be working with any foreign nation. That is not our prerogative.
Okay, so I guess I want to come back to our web forms here and go back to housing, because we were well, no, sorry. Let's not go with that one. Let's talk about businesses and go back to Jackson in Irvington. And Jackson asks how you would make sure small mom and pop businesses, especially those in underserved communities, can actually thrive during what we can all see coming. We're due for an economic downturn. And furthermore, Jackson asked, how would you tackle barriers to entry and unnecessary red tape in a way that still protects workers and consumers?
I'm one of those people. I'm like, I don't like red tape. If I see something, I'm going for it. And sometimes that becomes the problem, because like I see problems on the street and I fix them. And I see business owners who want to do the right thing, and they can do the right thing tomorrow and end up, how do I put it? They have to struggle to get through with all the red tape. I'm on the, Again, we're giving trillion-dollar companies tax moratoriums. Why are we taxing the hell out of these small businesses? Why are we not investing in these small businesses? I was talking to a friend who owns a very beloved deli on the south side of Indianapolis earlier today, and he was talking about how one of his big problems is to get to his deli, it's driving only. We need walkable cities where we encourage people to walk up to these small mom and pop businesses. About 2 blocks away from where I am right now, I have a business called La Prada. I love walking to it. I love supporting it. We have several small businesses that I can bike to at any point that I want. I want this to be accessible to everyone else. I don't. I prefer not shopping at sorry, my allergies are still getting to me, and I'm getting a little congested. Uh, but yeah, small businesses need all the support we can. I'm one of those people. I'm like, I don't want to give any support to any company that has over five. If you're $1 million company, eh, you've already figured it out. Let's support these mom and pop stores who are trying to figure it out. I
So
feel
what
like
I
I
hear
just
is
talked in circles.
no. What I hear is you not to besmirch the large companies, but they don't need the extra help
No,
that the small companies do.
no. I mean, I
Speaking of
still
policy,
remember.
go
Oh,
ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I still remember during the protests a few years ago, some of the small businesses got their windows broken into. And I got to know quite a few of these small business owners, because I'd walk over to Jack's Donuts over near the circle, or my friend George, who owns Giorgio's Pizza, or quite a few other small businesses, help them clean up the next day. And I've been very supportive of them all the time. We talk about what's it going to take to get their businesses to thrive, and most of it is just getting the government to get out of their way.
So, Cliff, I'm glad you brought up broken windows, because Daniel, back over on Substack Live at progressiveindiana.net, has a question, and he says that you're a local legend on the Indianapolis subreddit, where you've been banned multiple times. He says you also have an extensive comment history where you have frequently called other users, quote, fucking idiots, and have also
It's Reddit. I don't remember saying it, but I will agree.
Okay. Have also previously admitted to throwing a brick through a glass door, and that's why I bring this up, because someone stole your trash can. And what Daniel's question is, and somebody asked a similar sort of question on our web forum, is what makes you think you have the disposition to serve as a state senator?
Oh, I need to find these comments, because those sound amazing. I want to meet this legend of. I want to meet the legend that people think I am. I wish I were that brave. However, I am a fighter. I'm somebody who's going to get in somebody's face. I'm going to be very loud and obnoxious to people dehumanizing other people. When people trash the humanity of someone just for trying to live their best life, I get a little angry. And there's no. I mean, you can see right behind me. I still have my Black Lives Matter flag from the protests. I'm one of those people. I'm like, I want to see everybody thrive, but I'm not going to put up with some of the bullshit. And I'm going to let them know there are reasons why certain bills have been killed. It's because I spoke to the Republicans. I went to the State House. I told them how I felt, and I didn't change my mind. All the while, Democrats were trying to compromise from the get-go. I'm not going to be somebody who compromises the morals of Indianapolis. I'm not going to compromise anything that it comes through with anything.
All right. So I guess let's stay on this thread. Now, you mentioned your sign. You mentioned you protest. You are known as a local rabble-rouser or a gadfly or whatnot. That's different than legislating. How do you make that transition? Sierra asked on our web forum, how do you respond to critics who think that you lack experience and leadership qualities?
So I'm on the board of several organizations that I am in leadership. I'm in leadership with NESCO, the Near East Side Community Organization. One of the big things that I have focused on is Narcan and overdose training, where while the whole state is going up in overdose deaths, my zip codes that I work in have been 20% year over year less overdose deaths because of my work. I do work with something called Citizens Alliance for Public Safety. It is a organization where I try to connect people with public safety organizations, and realistically, I want people to be able to talk to the people who are supposed to be defending them, and I want the people who are saying that they're defending them to actually know the people that they're talking to. I want it to go throughout the entire city. With Citizens Alliance for Public Safety, we're actually doing a class right now where people are touring the 911 center so they can actually hear what's going on when somebody calls 911. That's going on right now. Unfortunately, for this season, I've had to drop out of the citizens academies where I would normally be helping out with this. These are courses that I've helped with the curriculum for. Other than that, well, now I'm trying to figure out where the question was. What leadership roles did I have? So leadership isn't just taking an unelected position. It is being out there in the community. It is being the person that people need you to be. It is speaking up for the people who have not been heard. Over the last several years, I have been the guy who got stories out from people who have not been heard, that reporters haven't listened to, politicians haven't listened to, the police have not listened to. I've been the one who pushed their stories to the forefront so they could get the relief that they need. That is what a leader does.
I guess let's move back into specifics here, and I want to come to Daxx on Facebook Live, who asked
Hey, Daxx.
A couple questions, and in a way, I think they're sort of related. So first, Daxx asks, Indiana was just voted as the second worst place to live behind only Texas. He says, tell us some of your ideas about how you want to fix that, and Daxx also asked, how do we tackle the problem of people working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet? And I feel like somehow those two things are related.
We have lost community in Indiana. I remember third spaces. We didn't call them third spaces. We just called them places to go where we could meet. I have friends where they have biking groups where hundreds of people show up to go biking, and we have community. We had coffee shops that used to have 100 people in at any given time. I still miss the Abbey coffee shop downtown. We have lost third spaces, and our internet, our social media has become our third space. We need to touch grass. We need to get out and see each other. We need to talk to each other one-on-one instead of just making snarky comments to one another on Facebook without knowing who the person is behind there. I get these snarky comments all the time because people think about my local legend status and they want to hitch a ride to it because they want to be able to catch a rising star and somehow get to be a local whatever they want to be. We need people to talk to each other, and that goes to Democrats talking to Republicans, independents, socialists, talking to people who you may not enjoy talking to at all, but you realize you have common humanity. Having a third space is number one, is the first thing that we need. As for second and third jobs, we need actual job protections. We need unionized labor. I'm one of those people who used to Uber at night. I would get out of my job and I would Uber. If I wasn't working in another university at night, I was Ubering. So I understand working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive.
You sort of mentioned again support for organized labor there, and we had another quick question come in along those lines, and this was from our web form. And Michael in Brookside asks, he said, "Well, one of Mitch Daniels' day one executive orders was to cancel collective bargaining rights for state public employees. Will you work on legislation to restore those rights?"
Not only restore those rights, but enshrine them. I would love to see them enshrined in the Constitution. I would love to see this to a point where it is impossible to take away collective bargaining rights. We need public employees to be able to know that their jobs are secure. We don't pay public employees that well. One of the greatest, I mean, technically, I am a public employee. I am an at-will employee because I don't have any backing of a union or otherwise. And Todd Rokita made that clear earlier last year, late last year, earlier this year, where he was having eyes on education, where he was looking at how do I fire educators who go against what he believes is wrong. So we need organized labor at the table, and we need them to be talking to every politician. We need something in place. I don't know what that is, but I would be happy to speak with Michael to find out what he needs, because collective bargaining should be on the table at every single time. Employees are when I want to fix something, I don't talk to the head of a program. I talk to the people at the bottom. I talk to the staff members. How are the staff members fixing something? What do they think is the problem? These are the people who actually know how to solve the problem, and they should be protected.
We earlier, talked about building housing using organized labor to do that, sort of staying on this thread. The top priority in the state house for Republicans, and on the House side of things anyway, was to increase housing stock. And this is a House Enrolled Act 1001 now. And it was passed with bipartisan support, though there were other things that maybe could have done. And one of the criticisms of it is that it overrides local zoning and, maybe housing safety and building ordinances. In order to do so, you are a proponent of local control.
Yes.
I know you've fought on the SB 52 with the bus line a couple years ago when the State House was trying to override the city's public transit plan. How do you, square this? We want local control, but are there places where local control maybe gets in the way of things that we need to do?
Absolutely not. Local control. We should not be banning municipalities, cities, towns from doing what is best for their neighborhood. We should be, when it comes down to, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. When we have things such as, we talked about SB 52, the State House thought that they needed to tell us how we run public transportation. We have the State House telling us we can't ban bad breeders for pets. We have the State House telling different places you can't build, or you can't stop people from building shitty houses. And this is where I feel like sometimes I'm a little hypocritical, because I'm one of those people who run and gun with how do we want something done? I'm sick of the red tape, but regulations are also built in blood. That is what I'm told all the time by engineers. We have we have regulations in place because it saves lives. There are a lot of things we need to worry about, such as environmental resilience. We need to make sure that people are not building on wetlands. And the state house is saying, no, you cities are not able to stop somebody from doing that, even though it's something that you would think that people who claim to be outdoorsmen, people who claim to be hunters and gatherers or whatever they think they are, they would want our wildlife to be protected. And we're trying to protect that. And we're being told, no, you can't do that in a local level. So I see that we need to allow local regulations. Sorry. Yeah, local regulations are important, and everybody knows best about what their community needs.
I guess let's move from the process of building housing to once it's up. And Alicia on Facebook Live says, since we're on housing, what would Clif like to see implemented to hold bad landlords to account?
So in my district, I believe it's something like 56% of the people in this district are tenants, and we have the worst tenants' rights of any state out there. If a landlord decides, hey, it's the middle of winter and your heater is not working, you have no pushback. I want to see at the very, very least escrows. If you're not in a livable house, you should be able to put your rent into an escrow, goes to some housing authority, not the Indiana Housing Authority, because apparently that's bad. And we need some housing authority that actually cares about the people. We need something that will stand up for the people. We need judges who actually see that these people are being let down. I spoke to a man, if I pull up my phone, I would look this up. Spoke to a man 2 days ago who has had black mold in his house, and he cannot get his landlord to do anything about it. It's been 6 months. He has 3 young kids, and he's trying to figure out how he remediates that. So I've contacted people for him. Unfortunately, I know where this is going to go. It may be that people have to take it on themselves to help him, because right now our government isn't going to do it. So we need to have tenants' rights. We need to have ways that if you're not getting served, landlords are held accountable. I would love to see landlords go to jail. I know that's a little fantasy land here in Indiana, but when you're saying that you're creating a safe space for people and their families, and you're letting them down to the point where they're getting sick, there needs to be punishment.
And it would be fantasy land to get punishment for landlords, but it would just be nice to have tenant protections involved, and that is something that you could do from the Senate, is introduce a bill to allow those sorts of things, because right now, I think even things like rent control are banned at the state level.
Yep. So Carmel's actually tried to do that.
Yeah. I guess on housing, or rather, in a way, the opposite of housing, our state Senate this past session put forward and passed Senate Bill 285, which made sleeping outside a crime. It stripped localities, including Indianapolis's ability to respond differently than that. They have to pursue criminal charges against folks who've been caught sleeping outside. What should we be doing at the legislative level to address homelessness? Because I'd suspect you would say, not this.
No, So I'm one of those people who I deliver food to the people living under bridges. I'm the guy who goes to encampments where people are trying to survive. And most of these people are just there because of circumstances. I knew one young man who went by, he called himself Miami. He has a government name. I'm not going to use it, but everyone called him Miami. 9 to 5, he would go to, 8 o'clock, he'd go to the Y. He would take a shower at the Y. He would do his white collar job and then come back and live in a tent. Everybody who was living under the 65-70 split, which that came under the purview of the state police, because they said, well, it's underneath a bridge, underneath a interstate highway. They had everything removed. They had all their tents, they had everything else trashed. We know that it takes 6 months for somebody living on the streets to find permanent housing. You need paperwork, and when those tents are trashed, you lose every single bit of paperwork. And because we don't have one-stop shops where caseworkers are actually putting all this stuff in electronically, connecting the dots from one agency to the other, you lose all that information and you start over from the beginning, because our systems are antiquated, and most of these people, the only way they remember them is through their from their physical paperwork. I want to see low barrier to entry housing. There was supposed to be a low barrier to entry housing in my neighborhood. We talked about it for years. We waited for the city to get funding for it. We saw the environmental remediation go on. We watched the process. And the minute the site was cleaned up, the site was ready to go. Somebody offered our mayor a $50,000 campaign, not bribe, donation, campaign donation. And suddenly that land that was supposed to be a low barrier to entry shelter became a privately owned boutique hotel. So we need to make it so. Even worse, here in Indianapolis, we find out that a good half of the people who are unhomed come from out of the city. They come here because they think we have the resources. Small town Indiana, where's their humanity on their sleeves? And yet people are leaving to come here because they did not get the help they needed in their own hometown. We need to build low barrier to housing everywhere.
This is a problem we have in Bloomington a lot too. A lot of the surrounding municipalities, when folks are unhoused there, or they have problems with them, they're like, "I'll just send them to Bloomington. They'll take good care of them there." And
bus drive is cheaper.
You find out that we're overwhelmed when that happens, as much as Indianapolis is. And I think addressing it not just in those cities that are experiencing that problem now, addressing it statewide definitely sounds like a good way to handle that. One of the groups overrepresented in the homeless population is the LGBTQ community.
Right.
And Sierra on our web form from Twin Air says, many queer and trans people in Indiana feel like their safety and rights are becoming more uncertain. With Indianapolis having a sizable LGBTQ plus community, what would you say to somebody who's asking whether they can safely build their life here? And what would you do to make sure that answer is yes?
Indianapolis is one of the few places here in Indiana that I actually think my queer friends actually feel safe. There's a few other places. Bloomington seems like a safe place. There's very few places that I would suggest any of them come to. One of the on my campaign staff, we did an internal poll. At one point, we found out that 70% of my campaign staffers were somewhere on the queer spectrum. And queer is a term that I grew up as something that I was not comfortable saying. The young kids still say it. So whenever I say it and I cringe a little bit, it's because when I grew up, that term was not a good term to be used. It was used to hurt, and it was used to hurt people. But noting that 70% of my campaign staffers are queer. I have friends who are trans. I talk to my trans friends all the time. They're scared. Talk to a good friend of mine over in Portland. You would think Portland was a place that trans people would be able to live comfortably. And she is scared to death. We need, for all the Republicans who claim to be libertarian and get out of my business, they need to get the fuck out of people's businesses when it comes to who they love or how they identify as. It's not my business what's in somebody's pants, and it should never be my business.
It's the small government argument definitely has seemed to fall apart with the MAGA turn in this country over the last several years. They're increasingly comfortable with big government.
Yeah.
So, just a few minutes left here, and if anybody's got a last question they want to slide in under the door, you get that up there right now. But I want to go to one more, I guess, before we give folks that opportunity. And we talked about the Republican House's top priority this year. We haven't talked about the Republican Senate and their top priority this year, which was making it more difficult for people to get Medicaid and SNAP. Our state made it even harder than Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I hate even calling it that. That's its name. But we made it even harder than the federal government mandated we make it. In our state, apparently over 100,000 people could lose coverage. How do you in the state Senate make sure Hoosiers are getting the services they need and deserve?
Number one, we need to get rural ambulances back. We need to have rural hospitals refunded because we are losing rural hospitals all throughout the state. We're telling people who live three hours away, if you want actual service, if your arm's been cut off, you should come to Indianapolis. I don't want you coming to Indianapolis. I love Indianapolis. Come to Indianapolis when your arm isn't cut off. I want you to have services where you live. We do all these under the guise of thinking that we're being fiscally responsible, and we're just putting the cost onto the people who are suffering the most. When we look at things such as Medicare for all, we start realizing we don't need companies like Anthem. I know that they're less than a mile from where I am right now, but Anthem is not needed. And we don't need to pay somebody $5 so they can give my doctor $1. And that's what it feels like, is the middleman gets the bulk of the money, where the people actually performing the services get scraps. Let's focus on Medicaid for all, Medicare for all.
Is that something we can do at the state level?
Mitt Romney did it over in Massachusetts. Why couldn't we do it here?
Fair enough. So, Clif, I've only got you scheduled for an hour. I don't see any more questions in the chat right now. I could go on all night and pick your brain, but I value your time, and I'm sure you have plenty of things to still do for the campaign this evening. So, why don't you say some closing words before I let you run?
I apologize to everybody that my brain is in a fog tonight because of these allergies. I'm hoping to serve all of you. I don't care if you live in Indianapolis. I don't care how far away you live. Your well-being, I want to see you all thrive. This is the goal of everything. I want to make sure voices are heard. I want I'm sick of the polite Democrats who are too afraid to tell people that there's humanity that's suffering because we want to keep the peace. And I'm going to be throwing bricks if we have to get shit done.
Clif,
metaphorically.
If folks want a fighter in the State House in District 46, where can they find out more about your campaign?
ClifMars.com. That's Clif with one F. Mars is in the planet. Nobody knows how to say Marsiglio, so I've been using my gamer tag for years. ClifMars.com. My Facebook, my Instagram, my Substack. All of that is found directly on my webpage.
Very good, Clif. Thank you for being here with us tonight, for taking questions. Thank you to the folks watching tonight for submitting your questions. We really do appreciate it. For folks who are Indiana politics junkies who maybe are in Indianapolis, it's not your district, but I'm doing another one of these this coming Sunday night with 4th Congressional District candidate John Whetstone. That's the district around Lafayette, and it's a very large district. It takes up like a quarter of the state. So that is Sunday night, 7 o'clock on these very same live streams. Join us then. But until that time, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.